Okay, so once again, welcome. Now, it reminds me a beautiful quote by Aristotle, a Greek philosopher, who said that, let food be thy medicine. Let food be thy medicine. When we talk about food being the medicine, it is very, very important to ensure that how we all can be part of performing each our individual roles and responsibilities by performing and conducting our business in the well-being of society and the consumers. So I would put forward maybe Ms. Pauline to you that where are we from achieving sustainability development goals when we talk about zero hunger? Could you please throw some light on that?
First, good morning, everyone. Well, it's worth mentioning that there are a lot of efforts that are being done in all countries to fight SDG 2 and SDG 3. There are many initiatives happening, people are focusing, awareness is increasing. However, lately when we look at those external factors that they come and impact your decisions and your initiatives, for example, like the pandemic, as well as the war now that is happening. This is putting a lot of stress on accessibility, for example. So if you look at the supply chain and how people are having difficulty in getting enough ingredients and the price increase of the commodities. So when we look at accessibility in particular, it's a big stress for all businesses in the world as well as nations. The second point is food waste. Although we have a lot of awareness on this topic, however, it's shocking to see that there is a lot of food that is still wasted every day in the world. You have already the statistics, I guess.
Yeah, let me share it with you. I think it's 33 to 50% of the food wastage every day globally. And it is surprised to know that this 33 to 50% of the food wastage is accumulating a value of $1 trillion. Isn't it a huge amount? I mean, if we see the per capita income, it contributes to a large extent. Now in this, against this, Ms. Pauline, which you just now mentioned, against this particular volume of a food wastage, we have 1 billion people globally every day who are hungry. How we can correlate this ratio of 1 billion people globally who are hungry and the food wastage value globally? Can you please throw some light on that?
Yeah, so for example, when we look at this region, like UAE, it is mentioned like that every person is wasting around 197 kg of prepared food per year. Oh. So it's a big ratio as well, which is around 38%. It might also increase during certain occasions, maybe during Ramadan, during brunches, during many occasions of the year. Definitely the country is putting a lot of effort to control this ratio and to reduce it. Also, when we talk about hospitality, there are a lot of initiatives happening to reduce this ratio. Coming from restaurants industry, there are a lot of initiatives that you can put in your restaurant, starting from first reducing the ordering, planning smart for your consumption in order not to over-order, for example, or over-prepare. Also, we try to work with many NGOs and food banks. So also in UAE, the food bank was launched in 2017. Also now there is an initiative called NAMA happening. So this is a way also in order not to throw food, you can support other people.
Okay, so I think what you mentioned is against the food wastage. How we, I mean the restaurant owners or the entrepreneurs, can help that the food wastage can be sourced to people who are hungry. So, coordinating with those organizations who can help supporting it. I think pausing a little bit onto that, I'll come to Mr. Ajay. Can you please throw some light that on one side we are talking about zero hunger, and on the other side we are also talking about sustainable cities and communities. And sustainable cities and communities definitely come with a good food. And on the other side, we are also talking about zero hunger. Could you please throw some light out of your rich experience? And I'm sure, which I know that you have been a founding member of Indian Green Building Council. So we Could you please throw some light on how this SDGs can corroborate with each other and help us find some way out?
So I think all the SDGs are related, and I think the two things which I think we will, because this is a health conference also. So the SDG goal 3 is health and wellness, and 11 is sustainable cities and communities. And food is a very important part of health. So it's not about how much food. In fact, it's been known worldwide that the less food that you eat, the more healthy you can be. So we have, and I know in my travels, for example, in Germany, if you order something, you have to finish it. You have to eat that food.
That's true.
And if you don't eat that food, then you have to pay double.
Exactly.
So I think that is something which we have to learn from. These are good examples which we have to learn. The second is, and I'm talking with respect to hunger, because the less food you waste, there'll be more food available for others. And secondly, I am a big advocate of vertical farming. Because as we are urbanizing, we can create 6, 7 stories. You have a restaurant. In the basement of that, you can grow many things. On the terrace, you can grow. In communities, so that the transportation is not much, because smart cities is also about getting people to use less fuels to transport whether things or people. So here we can have the farms as a concentric thing around the city that you create. I don't think it's very smart to create a mega city like Dubai, because in Dubai also you could take more than an hour to commute from one place to the other. So, but you can create smart communities, and cities takes a lot of money, but communities you can create with 5,000 people, 20,000 people, 100,000 people, and you can create the entire ecosystem. So I'll pause here. I think
So
I've
I
touched
think
upon.
very nicely you explained about vertical farming. So let me touch upon one very important aspect of agriculture, specifically in UAE. So if we talk about agriculture in UAE, Ms. Pauline, would you please, because you have been here, would you please throw some ideas on agriculture in UAE?
Yeah.
It is like, I mean, a few decades ago, there were some quantum of farming, and now the farming has taken up a new leap. So, if we talk about what Mr. Ajay just now mentioned about vertical farming or farming per se, what are your thoughts that how the farming has taken new shape from say 70s to now 2022, and how that can be helpful for forming a part of sustainability development goals?
Yeah, so in UAE, in 1970s, there used to be around 4,000 farms only.
Okay.
Now,
4,000 only, huh?
Yeah, now there are around 30,000 farms in the UAE.
Okay.
Which
So the
tells
farming
you-
has increased.
Yeah, it has increased definitely, and especially the government is supporting local farmers, entrepreneurs as well, to build their own farms, and they support them, of course, with funding. Like now there are around of $4 billion of investment to support those farms to have smart climate system, because you know
Okay.
that how the climate is in UAE, and to make sure that by providing these conditions, they can ensure to have sustainable production, enough resources for people as well as for restaurateurs.
Okay.
So it's very important when the nation as well is supporting its people, of course, to be able to improve and to grow this business as well.
But in this, so you mean to say that if the entrepreneurs or if the restaurant owners can have some kind of association with the farmers or the agriculturist to support them,
Yeah.
or to source. So here the food sourcing would also come into play. So how can be this sourcing or I would say collaboration kind of a stuff like we do in India also. In our season of heat, like starting from February till August, we do collaboration with the farmers who produce mango. So we source directly from them so that it is organic, And today, the need of an hour is, people are talking about organic food. So how we, because you from the food industry, even I come from the same industry, and there are many who would touch upon their own emotions to that industry. How we as food entrepreneurs can support such kind of collaboration, so as to ensure that food sourcing also becomes very important to perform a participating role in helping the goals to be achieved.
Yeah, so first talking about here, like in UAE and the restaurants as well. So what drives your
You
restaurant?
can keep the mic little, yeah.
So what is
Thank you.
driving the restaurants is mainly the guest and the demand. So first we need to mention that people are becoming more aware of what they want to eat. They are asking for organic ingredients. So usually the client is driving your strategy as a restaurant, as a business. And luckily, whenever you have more local farms here and more supply, you are able to really get this quality of good ingredients. So our role, of course, is to diversify our resources in order to make sure that we have enough supply of good ingredients to, of course, cook healthy and better meals for our clients. Okay. And if I want to take you as well to, for example, I come from Lebanon, and lately we noticed that due to, I have to mention it, women empowerment. So women in Lebanon somehow are driving the change by becoming themselves local farmers and improving the production and creating more food to people and opportunities for them as well to run their businesses.
That is so gracious.
So, yeah, it could be as small as like a lady
contribution to
working in a village and preparing.
Okay, wonderful. I think for this we should all have a round of applause, because women empowerment is, we all are talking about it today, and contributing to that objective is really appreciated. Okay, Mr. Ajay, you have been a driving force, I would say, in terms of when we talk about smart cities and we talk about smart communities. You have been the one who have helped the community to know how to fasten the seat belt to the technology. And you made the community exposed to the risk of the technology. So on one side, when we talk about urbanization, when we talk about artificial intelligence, where are we on tying our seat belts on this artificial intelligence and smart cities? And what can we do to contribute to achieve this goal? Could you please throw some light on that?
So I'll take since this is a slightly new subject, I'll give you a little background on this.
Yeah, that would be great.
So one is that there is a big move towards urbanization. And because people feel that in the urban experience, what you see on television and everything is that in a city you have malls and you have better entertainment and you have better opportunities and facilities and everything.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. We have the fourth panelist as well, so he can join in.
Welcome, Timothy.
Welcome,
okay,
Timothy.
welcome, Mr. Timothy. Mr. Timothy is a Silicon Valley native and long serial entrepreneur with a strong background in technology, finance, media, marketing. We have been waiting for you, Mr. Timothy. A huge round of applause for him. He has been also coming up with his own experience of F&B industry. Please take your seat, please. Please.
Just pull up another chair.
Thank you.
Once again, welcome to you. Yeah. By the way, he was not keeping well, but then he could still make a point to come here and to share his cherishable experience. Once again, welcome to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Ajay, please
So
continue.
welcome. I've been looking forward to getting enriched. So I was talking about smart communities and smart cities. So I was mentioning that we have a situation where about Asia and the Far East and the Middle East and this part of the world almost accounts for 50% of the world population. And we have a thing of urbanization which will go from 20% to almost 35%. So we are talking about something like 50 billion people, and out of that about 8 billion people more are going to get urbanized in the next 10 to 15 years. So that is the dimension we are talking about. And in fact, in order to do that, what would we need? We would need a lot of houses. We would need almost like 400 new cities and maybe about 1,000 odd communities. So when you are talking about one city, you are talking about at least a city with an average population of maybe 3 to 4 million people, because we are talking about Asia and this part of the world, which is, there is more of a dense population. So that is presenting a huge challenge, because we are talking about going vertical. We are talking about very smart urban transport systems. We are talking about less cars, less fuel consumptions. We are talking about EV. We are talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and the IoT of things. But on the other hand, if you are making the city smart, you don't end up by making yourself an idiot. Because
Exactly.
what you are doing is, even if you have to draw a curtain, if you have to cook something, the human element is gone. You can press a button. You can tell your artificial intelligence guy that, okay, this is the outcome that I want. And somebody earlier in this session was speaking that nowadays you don't need a very large sample size. So with AI, you can say, okay, 1,000 sample size or 500 from all over the world. This is the outcome I want, and AI will figure it out for you.
So I think here, Mr. Ajay, you mentioned about AI,
Yeah.
and I think Mr. Timothy, having his expertise in the same technology with expertise in supply chain in food management. So if we can move to him and seek
Yeah,
his advice.
I'll just finish what
Okay,
you
yeah,
asked
please,
me. So the point is that the digital is here to stay. We have to have smart technologies, but we have to understand what is the objective that it is serving, and we have to examine the safety aspects of it. So it doesn't mean that you don't use all the advancements in technology. We must use them. We must take advantage, but we must see how to put, as Bhavesh mentioned, seat belts on that technology so that we use it safely. So I'll come to more of that later, but please, we'd love to hear.
Yes, Mr. Timothy, please share your views on this.
Well, what we're talking about is the digitization of business processes straight across all sectors of the economy. Certainly mobility and smart cities are a huge part of that value chain. We're also looking at the world of food and beverage, which is a $3 trillion industry globally. And the digitization process is fundamentally rewriting the entire script. It doesn't matter what region you're in or what sector within the food and beverage space, it is changing, and it's changing quickly. We were already looking, according to the Union Bank of Switzerland, where food that was being ordered online and delivered was a $35 billion industry in the year 2019. They had forecasted that that market would grow to a $365 billion industry, or more than 10x, by the year 2030. And then COVID hit. And since that time that COVID has hit, we are now going to be exceeding those numbers before 2025. So with this level of growth, the opportunities are enormous. And we will be looking at, in terms of hyper delivery systems, which again will be playing into what we're looking at with smart mobility in the cities of the future, and how the people within the supply chain, how they will have to deal with those deliveries in a city that is not dealing with, where the centers of the cities will no longer be permitting cars, and they will be pedestrian zones. So there's a lot of major disruption, upheaval, and how that plays out with food, and how that ties into what our colleagues have been discussing here with the cities of the future. They're going hand in hand, and they're going to really need to coordinate those activities in order to be able to make good and deliver The last point I would like to make is one of the consequences of the COVID pandemic has been the fact that whenever we eventually somehow come out of it, we're never going back to where we've been. And we're looking at right now approximately 1/3 of people who have been going to restaurants are not likely to be returning once the doctors tell them that it's safe. And there's just been a dramatic shift in what people now are considering the next norm. And it's going to be a very intriguing next few years.
Thank you so much. I think that was really insightful. With this very interesting point which you mentioned about delivery business and having massive growth opportunities even in future, Ms. Pauline, I would like to request you to throw some lights on it. That on one side, we are talking about Zero Hunger SDG 2, and we discussed certain insights about it. At the same time, when we talk about delivery business, that also consumes kind of a packaging material. Even that also causes the food waste. What kind of equilibrium we can set in this business, if you can put your thoughts?
So unfortunately, when we're talking about delivery and the increase and the potential of delivery, you can connect it directly to the consumption of plastic and packaging and papers. Yes. And also, to tell you the truth, when it is recyclable, it's not even more affordable, because even if restaurants are trying to be aware and environmental friendly, and they try to find alternatives to get recyclable products, the fact is it becomes more expensive for them. So I hope this is still a wish that when we're looking at all those innovations, also if we can focus on how we can reduce the usage of plastic as well as paper, and to make it also more affordable when we want to do a recycling.
Okay, Mr. Timothy, would you please add something to what Ms. Pauline has said? How we can, the entrepreneurs or the restaurant owners can contribute in achieving this goal? Because it's very important these days. I mean, we cannot avoid packaging material when we grow with the deliveries, but at the same time, we also have to create an equilibrium.
Well, fortunately, we are not limited with smart technologies to the old ways. I think going forward, to address your concern about packaging and waste, and also of the CO2 emissions coming from various delivery services, it is our view that long-term we will be seeing more and more EV opportunities with electronic vehicles, being able to be providing the delivery service with respect to the packaging that you make reference to, and the waste stream that has traditionally been a part of food and beverage service. We will be seeing opportunities to looking at smarter methods of packaging, not the disposable packaging made of synthetics, but we will be able, our view is to see opportunities where people will be able to have reusable packaging. They talk about in the apparel field and the textile field that they're looking at buying smart and buying sustainably. Well, in that industry, that refers to, of course, buying clothing that will last, apparel that is not disposable. I think similarly, we're going to see a similar outcome in the food business, where there will be reusable packaging, and there will be some method and some supply chain where that will be able to, there will be a pickup service, and it can be dropped off and picked up, and perhaps people will pay more, but eventually economies of scale will make it more affordable.
True. Certainly. Mr. Ajay, would you like to add something to this? A stream of thought process where we are talking about this, and we also have SDG 2, which is well-being, along with good health.
SDG 3, yeah. Yeah, so the
Yes,
idea
SDG3.
is that my focus will be is that whatever we are doing, and food is a part of it, but even the community living, how can we make it healthier? So just to, I think, as experts on the food industry, you all have spoken, but I want to speak a little bit about, like we are talking about EVs. Now, I know that in India, a lot of electronic waste is actually sent to India to get incinerated and to burn. and that causes pollution. And pollution can travel across continents in 7 days. So we'll have to see what is, and if suppose we are talking about solar also. Now we know that the most efficient solar panels only transmit they are about 22% efficient. Now what does that mean? It means that 78% of that heat which is coming to the panel, which is ultimately supposed to go to the ground and has ways of absorbing, is going back into the atmosphere. And what is that doing? It's doing global warming. The wireless that we use, which I popularly talk about as electrosmog, you can see air pollution, but you can't see electrosmog because it's invisible. But it has a heat element. We are talking about 5G. People think that 3G, 4G, 5G is a progression, but 4G is in megahertz and 5G is in gigahertz. It's about 60 times stronger. So it's that much more heat into the system. Now, does that cause global warming? Does that cause things? I think these are things when we talk about doing certain things for the economy. But ultimately, as COVID has shown you, that if the health of people is not protected, the faster ways and the more economic ways will still come to naught. So I think it's an aspect which I'd like to dwell a little bit more on, but that I just want to put that center stage, that health with whatever is we are doing, which may be faster, which may be a different way, which may be a better way, we have to examine the health aspect. Whether it is electrical vehicles, you got talking about lithium batteries. Now nobody knows what you do with those batteries when they,
True.
stuff like that. So waste.
So thank you so much. I think you touched upon a different aspect coming to the health again. So Ms. Pauline, do you have any statistics to support?
So basically now when we're talking about eating healthy, it's not only about how much you're eating, or it's more about what you are eating. So there is something called the hidden hunger, which is the deficiency in nutrients. So
Sorry to pause you at this point of time. When we are talking about the subject which Mr. Ajay just now touched upon, Mr. Timothy, do you have any statistics to support how this electromagnetic aspects, I mean that kind of a waste, or that kind of, I would say, ultimately it is coming back to the psychological health of the people, or even internally it consumes that kind of vibrations. So a little bit away from the food, what Mr. Ajay is talking, which ultimately has to deal with sustainable cities and communities. Do you have any information to support how we as not only as a food business entrepreneurs, but as a citizen of our own country, how we can support to achieve this goal, if you have some ideas to throw?
I have a few ideas to the point of looking at electromagnetic fields and how they're impacting society's health.
Yes.
And also looking at the disposal of the lithium batteries that will be driving the EV economy. These are problems that we'll need to continue to have research done to be able to resolve them. I can cite one example. In Silicon Valley, there is a higher incident of children who were being born with various birth defects. And it was eventually found that the commonality that was the causation of all these children and what they were going through was the fact an area that was essentially an electromagnetic toxic corridor, or they called it a toxic triangle, which was actually impacting the birth of children. And this was where a lot of the research and development was being done in a lot of the computer science and into a lot of the electronic engineering. So there is a correlation, and I can certainly say that a lot of research needs to continue to be able to go into that field in order to prevent it.
Oh, that's good. I'll again come to.
Actually, just share a little bit on some of the research that
Yeah, I
we've
think that
done.
would really be great inputs.
So, what we had initially started when I started working in the health, and it started with my own personal health, where I found that some of the medical solutions didn't work, and I had to find my own way. So, what we found was that because all the electronic things that surround us are invisible, similarly, we encountered something called geopathic stresses. So these are certain emissions which come from the ground because of mineral deposit, because of cavities which are natural, and they inhabit about 20% of the Earth's surface. So we looked at that and we found a way to correct it without moving communities away or making any layout changes or things like that. So that has been a breakthrough, and we've done more than 100 million square meters of built up area so far, corrected and looked at the health parameters before and after. Similarly, for Wi Fi, the challenge was that we can't stop the emission because we need the signals, we need the connectivity, we need the signal strength. So, to find out a way by which the signal strength and the quality of the transmission is not impacted. So we did some research also with MIT, and we created a chip, we call it for want of a better word, which can be fixed on the back of any device, or we can put certain installations in an area where the waveform is changed so that it becomes resonant with the body. So which means that the signal strength and quality remains the same, but the waveform does not cause interference. Like you hear in an aircraft, switch off your cell phones, that is likely to interfere with the communication system of the aircraft. Now the aircraft communication system is about 200 times stronger than our body's communication system. But so you can imagine that if a mobile phone can disturb an airwave communication system, then it's very likely to disturb. And if we have time, I'll show you a 10-second strength
Demo.
test demo by which you will see that just holding a mobile phone, what it does to your body,
Okay.
not even talking on it. So these are the, so there is a lot of research going on, but what we need is the community awareness is rather low because the governments are in denial and the telecom industry is in denial because there is a lot of spectrum fee to be made and all that. But the health of the people has to be put center stage because we cannot, as Timothy is saying, there is a whole lot of research out there. There is an organization called EHS in the US. I don't know whether you heard of them, Dr. Deborah Davis. They've been doing a lot of research along with your former presidential candidate. And there's the amount of damage it does to children and to very young people because the blood-brain barrier is very small. And I think it is our collective responsibility to see that we are able to see. And one of the things I advocate is use 5G to get it to the home or to the office in a wired form. Don't have it in wireless way because it is so much stronger. It's a shorter transmission, and I know that in the US, the riot police used to use 5G waves to disperse mobs because the heat was so much that they couldn't stand it. So I think it's a very important, these are important aspects, and as Timothy said, we need much more research to be organized, and we need this thing to be center stage to look at health of people, whether it is coming out of the food that we eat. That also needs a lot of research. And also sleep. So we've done a lot of sleep studies with food, that what food you consume and how does it affect you. And we're working a lot with the hotel industry to find out that, because sleep is the number one problem in the world. So if you don't sleep well, you're not healthy.
I think, this subject is so vast that we cannot, incorporate in a particular time limit. But yes, we all are trying to gather possible and probable, I would not say conclusion, but yes, points to support the subject. I think let us collectively try to sum it up But at the same time, I have something to mention here. When we talk about health and we talk about physical health, it also reminds me to mention here about the mental health. And it reminds me a beautiful quote from Mahatma Gandhi ji, the father of the nation India, who wrote in his book, My Experiments with Truth. He wrote, which is originally in Gujarati language, and it says that Manas potana vicharoનું પૂતળું છે. And to translate, it says that a man is a creation of his own thoughts. A man is a creator of his own thoughts. So whatever, our thoughts become our actions, the actions become our habits, the habits becomes our character, and the character is ultimately exposed to the environment, to the society. Ultimately, with our own conduct, we become part of the implementing strategies to achieve the goals which United Nations has been talking about. So here I want to emphasize that mental health is equally important, and I think COVID era has really taught all of us to stay mentally fit. If we really want to achieve all other healths or all other aspects of the health, mental health is equally important. So I think because time is also very express, it seems. I think let us all sum it up by our thoughts and try gathering some brief summary on this topic. So starting with you, Mr. Timothy, if you can sum it up this subject with your key thoughts here, would be highly appreciated.
Well, I'm going to focus on the food and beverage aspect once again. During the pandemic, we've found that people have been working remote. They have been isolated from society, and they have sought and found comfort in their own homes, eating food while they were working remotely. There was nobody supervising them. There were no rules. And in this manner, they also were able to find and reimagine a new connection with food. And they're now eating healthier because they're not buying processed food, prepackaged food. They've actually been having food delivered to them, which is healthier. It's fresher. They're actually engaging in cooking, which perhaps with their careers or their families, they didn't have time before. And this is creating a sense of, I think, mental health, well-being in this association and connection with food. And as we go forward, beyond the pandemic, really is what we're talking about here, over the course of the remainder of the 2020s. I think we're going to see this trend continue to grow. It's a mega trend. And I think that in the long haul, people are going to be in a better mental state because they've been able to regain some sort of a healthier life, work balance, and the role that food plays in that capacity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Coming to Ms. Pauline with her expert inputs, if you could please sum it up with your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is awareness across every place, starting from schools to businesses and to our mainly household, the way we behave, the way we waste the food, the way we overuse papers and plastic. And I want to quote Robert Swan. He said, the biggest threat to the planet is when someone believes that someone else will save it. So we should all consider ourselves responsible in making a change.
Exactly. We all have to be responsible enough. Before I finally come to Mr. Ajay for a summing up of the session, I would request from the esteemed guests from our audiences if they have to ask something or they have some thoughts to share. Anyone? Yeah, please. Can we give the mic to...
Good afternoon, esteemed panelists.
Yes, good afternoon.
This is Siddharth representing ISKCON from India. I have a very simple question. We were talking about the SDG number 2 and SDG number 11 together. Now, there are 4.46 billion people living in the urban cities and 3.42 billion people living in the rural. What we are talking today, the food insecurity remains 55% in rural, while only 45% in urban. But we talk about only SDGs at urban level. How, my question is to all the panelists, how do you think that the translation of the SDGs can happen to a more in-depth grassroots level? So also as to take that behavioral change that we talk about to realizing this, not by say 2030, but by say 2050.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Siddharth, for a wonderful question. I think this answer was touched upon by Ms. Pauline and even Mr. Timothy on the creating the awareness. But then if you can please put your thoughts to answer this question. Yeah, Mr. Ajay, yeah, please.
So I agree, it's mainly awareness and encouraging local farmers and local people to take care of their own production and resourcing the food and having the food secure to their table every day.
I think there was one more point which we recently discussed is to encourage the entrepreneurs. I mean, people like maybe Mr. Ajay, Mr. Timothy, to keep encouraging the upcoming entrepreneurs to corroborate with the farmers, to corroborate with the kind of people who keep promoting the organic agriculture. And that's how to create that kind of a supply chain with a complete ecosystem. I think that is one of the way so that by next 2 to 3 years or 5 years down the line, that awareness can be inculcated in everyone's thought process. Yeah, Mr. Ajay, if you would like to
actually, it's a very relevant question. And initially I had mentioned that this concept of the smart cities, we must have communities which are self-sufficient, which means that in that community itself, you grow whatever are your needs. You don't have to get it from very far away. So you do things like vertical farming. If you have enough space, then from the city you make concentric circles where whatever are your supplies and whatever are your… So an urban settlement or a self-sufficient settlement doesn't have to be with a very large population. It can be even with 5,000, 10,000 people. And there we can have cooperatives have a big role to play. In a state like Gujarat in India, the cooperative movement has shown what can be done.
Yeah,
with
it's a
collection
revolution
of people.
in itself. Yeah.
It's a revolution. The milk revolution, a whole lot of things.
Yeah, Mr. Timothy?
To your point, innovation will be the key to be able to address those areas that you're talking about. It's just been mentioned, vertical farming, urban farming, full transparency, okay, full traceability, okay, from the source. Okay, they talk about from the farm to the table. This is going to be more than a catchphrase. This is going to be a way of living. And we talk about sustainable food systems. We're going to be talking more in the future about sustainable nutrition. We talk about food security. We're going to be talking about nutritional security as well, which is very similar. But we're going to be looking at healthier food. So if you're going to have to feed the masses who have not been fed, we might as well make sure that we feed them with the best food that we have. Let's make it healthy.
Okay, so I think let us come up to a point where I think we have the conclusions. I would say how we can create an awareness in being part of the solution to the goals to the United Nations of implementing these SDGs. I think with this, I would like to thank once again Mr. Timothy for enriching your experiences and sharing with all of us. Ms. Pauline, thank you so much for wonderful eye-opener statistics which came from you. Even Mr. Ajay, because your enriched experiences and your connection itself with United Nations help us to know more about the subject. And thank you all the esteemed guests and the listeners for being part of this. With this, I would like to end this session. Thank you, and we'll keep stay in touch with all of us to know more about how we can be part of the solution. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.